ナム妙法蓮華経。ナム妙法蓮華経。ナム妙法蓮華経。Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Welcome back. Thanks for being here. I hope that you're feeling well and secure. Today we're going to finish up the essence of the Lotus Sutra, writing of Nichiren, a treatise by Nichiren on the Lotus Sutra. And once again, we're going to be confronted with Nichiren speaking on the one hand to the context of his life, Japan, the time period, our time period, and the factors in his propagation of the correct teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha. Those being that he's living in an era of, should we call it dictatorship, totalitarianism, authoritarianism, obviously. It's the shogunate, and the law is the blade of the samurai. So, very bad pun, but things are rather politically cut and dry. Sorry, I couldn't resist. But also, that's the obvious samsaric observation, but also mentally, what you might call spiritually, but we understand as Buddhists, spirit is mind, heart, right? The way we experience. There's a tremendous amount of history. And that history, not only of Buddhism, but of mankind, comes with a lot of baggage. Not all of it bad, a lot of good baggage too, like, agrarian improvements, technology, intelligence, the capacity to understand, right? We talk about this in Buddhism all the time, the capacity of the people, their ability to abstract at a certain level, to understand how the mind works as a co-factor in life. We can think of life as a very physical thing with a lot of chemical and physical properties. But what we often don't equate with life is the mental component, the experience component, right? So all of that is to say that a lot of the stories and the expedient means that have come before Nichiren, he has to address in a useful way for our time, to understand. So as we close this essence of the Lotus Sutra writing, he's going to answer a question, and he's going to use the context of the way people understand the teachings of Buddhism. And I want to take a moment to explain, and he'll say it, but it won't be maybe as obvious as we need it to be today, that he's talking about that exact thing that I keep referencing, is that our existence, our identity, is simply like identifying a molecule of H2O, water, doesn't mean that that molecule of H2O, water, is separate from the lake, the ocean, the waterness. It simply identifies one molecule. This is what you and I are. I am a vessel, an instantiation, a manifestation, billions of manifestations actually, that I identify as me, but that are not separate, not other from every atom, molecule, energy that is the entirety of the universe. We're all non-static. Every single energetic particle of the universe is in motion. It has kinetics, as well as every single molecule in my body and yours. We're all moving through time-space, and therefore experiencing time-space, or life, the universe itself. Understanding, perceiving that truth, that changes the nature of our experience of life. That is Buddha. That experience, that knowledge, that seeing, that knowing. It removes the mystery of everything and supersedes the mystery, because mystery is ignorance, not knowing. And Buddha gives us the magnificence of, the knowing of, the majesty of this experience of life. So how might we then explore the relationship between the seeming duality of this physical experiential universe in light of understanding it in its true non-static way? That the physicalness of the universe is this fleeting picture of the engine, the constant manifestation of potentials as they arise, endure for a little while, as they decay, because they never endure as a static thing. They're constantly just like a human life. From baby to child to young adult to old age to decrepitude to end of cycle. It's within the greater cycle. It's just these little blips enacting the same thing the entire universe is doing. Consider that a sentient human lifetime is enacting the entire drama of the universe. Born, growing, manifesting, enduring, decaying, as Stephen Hawking or Roger Penrose would say. At some point, everything we know of in this universe will be swallowed up in black holes and emitted as energy, photons, no mass, just energy. And when there's no mass, there's no space. And when there's no space, there's no time. And when there's no time, energy, quiescent, unmanifested potential, until some leftover disturbance sparks the cycle all over again. A cyclical conformal cosmology. I love that idea of Roger Penrose. It's so amazingly beautiful. And a human life is exactly the same, albeit on a far more minuscule time scale, yeah? So, the question to close our study of this treatise: what causes these major, medium, and minor calamities? Remember, Nietzsche was reviewing all of these different scriptural stories of calamities that have their basis in actual observation of eclipses, earthquakes, famine, so on and so forth. And so, because they're expedient means, and because they're easily perceivable reality, they're great tools for teaching the nature of our minds and how we affect everything we experience in life by virtue of our mind set. Yeah? So here he goes. The Sutra of the Golden Splendor says that it is because, quote, people respect one who practices false teachings and torment and punish one who practices right teachings. So in common language, we all make mistakes, we misunderstand things, and it's not until something generally explodes in our face that we've come to terms with, maybe I didn't understand this as well as I thought I did, and now I have a whole new idea of what's going on. But also he adds the component that we are very easily led. There are those humans whose quest for superiority, for power, or even for teaching, maybe a good, you would say, endeavor. I endeavor to share knowledge and teach people. But if your knowledge and teaching is not well-founded or incorrect, then you're spreading that misperception and misleading ideology to others. So that's not good, right? It's not always, I want to disabuse you of the idea that there's an idea in Buddhism of good and evil. It's not that there are two sides to life. It's just the recognition that if you're living your life, investing your life, your time, your effort, your actions, your karma into non-life affirming endeavors, Buddhism says, well, how can you be happy? How can you be free of anxiety and stress if the actions you take, even if you aren't aware, are not life affirming, not leading you to joy, success spiritually, happiness, nurturing relationships? That may be what you are seeking and want, but if your behaviors don't equate to that, aren't you getting in your own way? Aren't you fighting the true Dharma without even knowing it? This is what Buddhism calls ignorance. And by following those who would mislead us, we are committing to that behavior. You can't blame the teacher. As Shakyamuni points out many times, it's on us. That's why we must study, because we don't know everything. But through insights we can, through challenging ourselves we can, by reading these treatises and Goshos and sutras and commentaries. The more we read, especially if we find things that don't seem to agree, this is the space, the mental space, we make our own insights. Ah, that's obviously life affirming. That Is that good? Is that evil? Doesn't really matter. Those are labels. But does it affirm life or does it lead me astray? And the formula of Buddhism is simply this. The more you adjust your actions, your mindset toward life-affirming actions, behaviors, the less stress, the more and more you'll push not only anxiety from yourself, but the causes of the anxiety within your environment. See, in Buddhism, there's never a you and other. There's a consistency from beginning to end that as you behave, you conduct yourself through this experience, your environment, so too do you experience the results of that. There is no separation. They're intimately intertwined, interdependent. So this is what Nichiren is talking about here, using these previous expedient means. The Lotus Sutra, Nirvana Sutra, and Sutra of Golden Splendor preach, quote, because people respect evil persons, misleading persons, people who are not correct in their conceptual knowledge and teaching of life affirmation, therefore misleading and pulling people away from correct behavior, correct thinking, correct action, and punish virtuous ones. Why do they punish virtuous ones? Because the ones who see more clearly, those other teachers see as denouncing them. You think you're better than me? Without considering that they may be wrong, they immediately react and demonize. This is the behavior of ignorance, of childishness, of foolishness, of arrogance, of ego. So they lash out at people simply because they know better. Rather than considering that they too could learn, they fight it. How often do we see that human behavior, yeah? The movement of stars and seasons of wind and rain will lose their regularity. In other words, this can't help but be reflected in the environment of other people, of the grasses, of the skies, of the environment. If you behave poorly, then your environment will equally reflect that behavior. And there comes your stress and your anxieties and so on and so forth. Remember, Buddhism is about experience. It's about the mind. It is preached in the Sutra of the Great Assembly, Nichiren continues, when Buddhism declines, so on and so forth, evil kings and evil monks will destroy the true Dharma because they don't want to be held responsible for erroneous views. They don't want to admit that they're basing everything on their ego, their will to power, rather than compassion and an openness to seek betterment. And in the Sutra of the Benevolent King, quote, when saints leave the lands, 7 calamities are bound to happen. When right thinking, when life-affirming behavior leaves the land, well then, how can the land be life-affirming? All the actions and beliefs and causes and influences are being destructive. And so the land will reflect that causation. Yeah? When monks are arrested and treated as prisoners, regardless of laws and rules, Buddhism will be ruined soon, end quote. and, quote, seeking fame and wealth, many evil ministers will preach to the king, crown prince, and princes about what will end up destroying Buddhism and their country. The king will believe them without discerning good from bad, because it's all about ego and influence. If you satiate that, then it's good, without considering the consequences, yeah? Or options, for that matter. Examining the state of current Japan reflected in the bright mirrors of these scriptural statements, we can see that natural disasters in heaven and on earth overtaking Japan today exactly match the sutras like two pieces of tally. My insightful disciples, you and I, shall see this fact for themselves. Look at the world around us today. Look at what drives all of the horrific activities going on in the world today. It's easy to see that the people who are promoting these acts of violence and inequality, it's all greed, anger, and stupidity, isn't it? It's driven by ego. It's so painfully obvious to see. It keeps me chanting every day. Don't you every now and again? I can't listen to the news anymore. I want to know what's going on, but within minutes, I just want to cry and crumble. I want to go away. I don't like that feeling. I know you don't like it. And I've spent a lot of years trying to escape it, but you can't, because it's our environment too. So it's not that we need to escape it, it's that we need to alter it. We need to change it. We need to influence it. Even if we're just one little drop of fresh water in the frickin' ocean, we must be that drop of fresh water if we're to shed, to hold at bay those negative energies. Only you can do it. Only I can do it. We, by practicing correctly, can influence others. Right? That's why we're gathering on YouTube. That's the beneficence of Sangha. That the more we subscribe, that we share, that we exist on the mechanism of YouTube, we can use YouTube's own algorithms to make this teaching, this truth, more available to more people, make more people encounter it. It's our bodhisattva action in minimum, what we can do on this platform. Let's use it. We've never in history had this kind of a social distribution opportunity. This is why I ask you to comment. If you make a comment, it affects the algorithm. If you like, it affects the algorithm. If you subscribe, it really affects the algorithm. Yes? For propagation, I've long been demonetized, so I'm not worried about wealth. My only concern is influencing the world around me so that I can feel secure, so I can feel sane, so I can influence the world to be a more beautiful place. Like standing on this 15-acre parcel and looking at all the green around me and all the birds, and the planet has tremendous beauty, let alone the universe, if you're into cosmology. So by comparison, the avarice, greed, and stupidity in the human endeavor, activity, in our world, it's so tiny by comparison. And that makes it manageable in my mind. It makes it much more accessible to my practice. I really can affect it, influence it. I can't deter. I can't fall away. I can't stop. I'm needed. You're needed. We are important to life through our proper understanding, and therefore our actions influence tremendously life in general. Wow, that's so huge, it's hard to understand. And if you're just starting out in this, that may be your biggest obstacle to your confidence. But please, please be confident, because it's absolutely true. So let's continue and see if I don't want to miss anything here, but I respect your time, so I want to finish this Gosho today, this treatise. You should know that all evil ministers today in Japan are trying to speak ill of the one votary to the emperor, princes, and generals, causing him to leave the land. Question: King Pusamitra ruined Buddhism in India, right? Buddhism was driven out of India, unbelievable as that sounds. Emperor Wuzong of Deng did the same thing in China. And Mononobe Moriya stood in the way of Buddhism in Japan. This is another history lesson. These are actual people, right? Deva Bodhisattva, now this is from the sutras, stories, expedient means, and Venerable Shima were killed while spreading the Dharma. Why did not major calamities happen then? Oh, okay. Another expression of doubt. Well, there were plenty of times when evil things happened on the planet, and I don't seem to remember an equatable response from the earth, the planets, right? So again, this is that disconnection of mind, looking at people and environments as separate things, other, when the description is being missed in that question, that this is a self-experience, a mental experience. Yeah, there may be earthquakes, there may be eclipses, there may be famine and weather events, but it's about our experience. How do we navigate through these periods of change? Obstacles, if you like, but everything's in change all the time. And if you can't handle change, then you're going to suffer. But when you understand the entirety of the process, change is exciting. Change is an opportunity. You see life affirming rather than the burden of life. Yeah? This is the crux of Buddhism. Answer: that's because the size of the calamities depends on the person. I couldn't say it more clearly. The experience in the mind of the person is where the calamities are great or small, conquerable or not, overwhelming or opportunities. That happens in your mind. For 2,000 years of the ages of true Dharma and semblance Dharma, evil kings and evil monks believed in heretic religions, called themselves leaders, or believed in wicked gods. In other words, they were totally misleading. They were taking positions of authority and spewing a bunch of nonsense, and people, being authoritarian, tend to follow what they're told. So that influence is huge. Even though destroying Buddhism is a serious error, or sin in this book, but it's an error, right? An error that affects life. Their sin is less grave compared to evil beings and monks of today who ruin Buddhism by breaking with Mahayana and putting conviction in Hinayana, or by breaking with the true teaching following the expedient. As they try to ruin Buddhism internally and mentally without killing ministers or burning temples, their offense is more grave than that of the previous generations. Why do you think he says that? Because in this era, in this time period, the Lotus Sutra is obvious from all of the teachings and scholarship. This is the fifth 500-year period after Shakyamuni's passing. This is the time period Shakyamuni himself said, this is when this great change is going to happen. And the Lotus Sutra is the only teaching that will lead us to Buddhahood. And so by insisting on teaching these other magical provisionary teachings that no one will attain Buddhahood with, they are standing counter to the life-affirming teachings of self-manifestation, self-realization of Buddha. They're leading everyone astray. So this is far worse than simply not understanding. Do you see? Like we read about the Shingon sect. Shinran sect. Shingon, yeah, sect. Actually knowing that the Lotus Sutra is far superior to what they're teaching, but manipulating through asking clever writers amongst themselves to usurp the Lotus Sutra and bring the wisdom of the Lotus Sutra to demonstrate that their superiority, outright inventing scholarship that doesn't exist, just so they could be on top. Nichiren continues, my disciples, my students, should see this fact and strengthen their conviction in the Lotus Sutra all the more because of the nature of their enemy, our enemies, those that would stand in the way of our enlightenment. As you stare at a mirror with angry eyes, the mirror reflects your anger. Those strange phenomena in the sky are due to the human offense of slandering the true Dharma. Two suns appearing simultaneously is an omen of two kings standing side by side in one country. Now, you see what he's doing. Something I've tried to elaborate on as we've read these great stories. It's not that there are actually two physical suns in the sky. It's that there are two great influences in our lives. And Nichiren says here, as two suns appearing simultaneously is an omen of two kings standing side by side in one country. In other words, confusion about leadership, confusion about which way to go, division in the country. Gosh, where do we see that today? They will begin to fight. Oh yeah, because that's what ego does. Stars disturbing the revolution of the sun and moon are omens of vassals infringing upon kings. Lower ministers seeking power will try to outdo the king, right? Senators ridiculing or sucking up to higher ups, presidents and vice president, or so on and so forth, right? Many suns competing against one another are omens of war in this world. I don't think I need to describe that. Look at the world today. How many wars are going on right now? Many of whom we never hear about because of our corrupt media, right? We keep a lid on that. We want division, but we don't want too much information because then people will start thinking they know better. Can't have that. Venuses appearing side by side are omens of fighting between princes. Again, easy to witness. When the country has thus gone out of order, there is no doubt that holy men or men, virtuous men who are votaries of the Lotus Sutra, such as Superior Practice Bodhisattva, hint, hint, Nichiren, will appear in this world. Here I am, establishing the three doctrines of the essential section of the Lotus Sutra, the spreading of the Odaimoku of Namo Myoho Renge Kyo widely throughout the world. The three doctrines of the essential section of the Lotus Sutra we've already discussed, right? Honzon, Kaidan, the invocation of the law, Myoho Renge Kyo. He doesn't list all three, but he does, in fact, by simply spreading the great daimoku of Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. See, Namu, incredibly important in this statement. Myoho Renge Kyo, yes, the reward body, the self-actualization of Buddha in mind, in our experience, in our sight, in our understanding. Namu being the apparatus embracing and holding the Buddha as we invoke it. Namu. Right? Myoho Renge Kyo, Honzon, Na, Kaidan, Mu, reward. The instantiation of, the embracing within and without, in samsara, the Buddha mind, both at once. That's the essence of the Lotus Sutra. Okay, and that didn't take too long. Risho Kanjo, a treatise on establishing the right way of meditation. I might jump to another book. I saw something in this book that I thought might be interesting. A little bit of a, changing it up a bit. A lot of us Nichiren followers, we study the Lotus Sutra and Shakyamuni's teachings through the scholarship of Nichiren, and Tendai, and Dengyo, and so on. And we can come up against, as you and I have many times, really repetitions through different lenses of the same concepts over and over and over. But sometimes some of us get curious about, we talk about these earlier changes and these earlier teachings, but I really don't go on and go read the entire Tripitaka. Although if you want to read some of it, you'll get a clue very quickly as to what Nichiren is talking about. And I advise you, if you're curious at all, do it. It'll only expand and solidify your experience of Shakyamuni's Lotus Sutra. I promise you. It'll happen very quickly. But sometimes, whether it's we don't have time, we don't have the facilities, whatever, a lot of people want to know about the systematic change of Buddhist teachings over time. And more to the point, does Nichiren have anything to say about this? Well, obviously, he does in criticism of his own time and the teachers of his own day. But where does Nichiren really sit down and analyze early teachings, later teachings, not necessarily as opponents of the Lotus Sutra, but as just how do they sit? What do they say? Where does the scholarship define the differences? I think that's an interesting question. And so I found this Gosho called The Outline of All the Holy Teachings of the Buddha. I don't like that word holy because being a Westerner, that has so much charisma about being from other that I absolutely reject that. They're the significant teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha. And so as an outline, Nichiren has a slightly different tact. And he talks about the four doctrinal teachings. The Tripitaka teaching. He goes over how to take it apart and say, this is what the Tripitaka says. Page turning karma. The common teaching. The distinct teaching. The 52 ranks. The perfect teaching. So he really, the pre-Lotus Sutra and the first four of the 5 periods. The Lotus Sutra of the 5th period. So it's really, I hadn't read all the way through it, but the 4 major non-Buddhist schools in India. See, there's a lot of history in here. And I think that's how he closes, yeah. So through these descriptions and these earlier, he's still going to criticize the evolution in his day. I mean, obviously, he needs to do that because ultimately we need to know how all of this plays out in our correct practice. But, and then he has a treatise on the teaching capacity, time, and country, which we've read about these Goshos before, albeit through different translations. I'm going to read all of this stuff, don't worry. But I thought as a shift, maybe, a slightly different approach, we could all use some exposure to what do these earlier teachings say in light of the Lotus Sutra and Nichiren scholarship. So let me know in the comments what you think, if this would be a good idea. We're going to read it eventually, but I'm just curious if some of you specifically are saying, yes, I'd like to know more about the Tripitaka. Or yes, I had a friend who's, ridicules me and holds the Tripitaka as, the correct practice. Yeah, there's still a lot of that today. And Nichiren would not have many kind words for those people simply because they are actively really working as obstacles to their self-realization and the people that they communicate to. So, yeah, unfortunately, not good experiences will come to those people, which makes me lament, makes me want to practice all the more. But many of them have ended up coming to this channel, to this school. So I respect you. If you're one of those people, I respect you greatly for having had the dedication of heart and mind to find the true answer, to see the fallacies or the inadequacies of earlier teachings and break away from the conditioning to find something more profound, to know that there's something more profound. As Nichiren would say, that's an indication that the seed of Buddhahood has been planted in you. So here in the Lotus Sutra is where you can express that, grow that, blossom that seed like the lotus. Yeah? Namo Myo Renge Kyo. Thank you so much for listening, for participating. Please like, subscribe, or dislike and subscribe. Use the comments section to let me know your thoughts, what you think I should be investigating next. Am I doing a good job? What do you think of this? Let's talk about the Tripitaka and so forth through Nichiren's lens. Why not? He's our scholar, our mentor, yeah? Anyway, all that being said, you know how much I appreciate you, and I'm so proud of you for your practice, for your dedication, for your confidence. That's everything. That's everything. For those of you who are generous, kind enough, have the opportunity to support these efforts through donations, through Patreon, through PayPal, paypal.me/SifuSylvain. I don't have words for how important you are to our Sangha, to this practice, to the influence that we can have in redressing the craziness in our world today. You are Bodhisattva of the earth. Namo Myo Renge Kyo. I will let you go. Not sure what we're going to study next, but it's going to be Buddhism, and it's going to be from our mentor and our correct practice of the Lotus Sutra, Buddhism. Thanks again. Bye for now.